So, can the police arrest you without any evidence? Now, let me give you a real life example of how this has happened. So, let's say you're out at a bar and you're drinking and you drive home after, and you know you should not have driven home. You probably should have taken an Uber, but you're only about 10-15 minutes away from your residence and you think you can make it. Unfortunately, you get into a single car accident and you strike a tree. Now, at this point, you're freaking out because you know you are absolutely drunk and you knew you should not have driven home. And what you do is you call your best friend. Your best friend comes to your rescue, they pick you up and they drive you home. Now, obviously, there's nobody else to drive your car home, and so you leave it where it is, intending to pick it up in the morning. Now, when you wake up in the morning, your intention, of course, is to go immediately and pick up your vehicle from where it was. Unfortunately, the police get to you first. They knock on your door and they say, hey, we saw your vehicle because you ran the plates, and we saw that your vehicle was in a collision with a tree and it's totaled. Do you know who was driving your car yesterday night? Now, of course, because you follow attorney Hannah Akintoye on YouTube, you know your rights and you know that you probably should not answer any questions, especially if you're being suspected of a crime. And so you don't answer any questions and the police let you go. They don't say anything and they don't arrest you. Now, unfortunately, a week and a half later, the police come back knocking on your door and they have an arrest warrant and they're saying that you are being put under arrest for the charge of driving under the influence. Now, as far as you know, there was nobody else in your car, no other witnesses. So how could the police arrest you without any evidence? I am attorney Hannah Akintoye, and when it comes to evidence of any kind, especially if you're being charged or arrested for a crime, there are two important types of evidence that you need to know. There's direct evidence and there's indirect evidence. Now, the first is direct evidence. Direct evidence is essentially the smoking gun evidence, meaning that if somebody shoots a gun, you have the smoking gun available for the police to collect and put it into their evidence bag. The other type of evidence is indirect evidence. And indirect evidence is essentially circumstantial evidence. What is circumstantial evidence? Well, the best way that I can explain it is with an example. Let's say it's a snowy day in Washington, D.C., and it snows all day. Now you go to sleep at the end of the day, and when you wake up in the morning, you see that there are paw prints in your backyard. Now, you know you don't have a pet and you don't have a dog, but you know for sure that those prints in your backyard are paw prints. Well, just because you don't have the evidence of the actual animal doesn't mean that you can't say that an animal walked in your backyard overnight. So you can actually say as a fact that it truly happened, that an animal went in your backyard, even though you don't have the direct evidence. That is essentially what circumstantial evidence is. So that is the explanation of direct evidence and indirect evidence, and essentially indirect evidence is circumstantial evidence. Now, in the situation and in the scenario that I gave you where the person was arrested for DUI, based upon the facts that I gave you, it doesn't sound like the police have enough evidence or any evidence at all to arrest that individual because I haven't mentioned any direct evidence. But let's say I gave you additional information. Let's say when you were at the bar, you were wearing a bright yellow jacket. And at the bar, there is video surveillance of you wearing that bright yellow jacket and also having several drinks. Let's say there's additional video surveillance outside a store. And this store captures you on video driving in front of their store and hitting this tree. And in fact, you get out of the car in your bright yellow jacket and your face can be depicted in the video footage. Based upon this evidence, now nobody actually saw you driving, but based upon this additional evidence, we have some circumstantial evidence that you were likely driving under the influence. If the police can, for instance, pinpoint a specific time where you were allegedly drinking and also a specific time when you were actually driving, would they have enough information to charge you with a crime? And so in these situations, when it comes down to charging somebody without any quote unquote evidence, it's really going to come down to what kind of circumstantial evidence the police have and how strong that evidence really is. So ultimately, the police can charge you with anything as long as they have probable cause to charge you. But at the end of the day, the standard of probable cause is much lower than the standard that is required for trial. So even though, let's say, a police officer has the ability to charge you based upon either direct or indirect evidence that they're able to obtain of you, will they actually have enough evidence to convict you? That's really what the issue is going to be. Now, there are often a lot of people who get charged, but by the time it gets to a prosecutor, they still have to make a decision about whether there's truly enough evidence to prosecute you and whether or not you'll actually be found guilty at trial. Just because you're charged with a crime doesn't mean that you're actually going to be convicted of that same crime. The standard of proof beyond a reasonable doubt, that's the legal standard in a criminal trial, is the highest standard that exists in any type of court proceeding. And so in order to reach that level, somebody has to be pretty certain that you committed that specific crime that you were charged with. So if you're ever in a situation where you are charged with a crime and you don't feel that the evidence is really strong, talk to an attorney and find out if that evidence would really truly hold water in court. So I hope that brings some clarification to you on how or if the police can really actually charge you with a crime without having any evidence. If you have any questions, always feel free to reach me here and comment below or on my website, mydclaw.com, and I'm always happy to chat with you further. As always, take care, and I'll talk to you all soon.